Before we begin, a quick and important disclaimer. This video is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute professional psychological, legal, or medical advice. The digital landscape is constantly evolving, and while we strive for accuracy based on current research and historical trends, you should conduct your own due diligence and consult with qualified professionals regarding the specific safety and mental health needs of your children. The average American teenager now spends nearly 9 hours a day glued to a screen, and for many parents, that glowing rectangle has become a digital black box, where we have no idea what is actually happening inside. You might think your child is just watching harmless dance trends or gaming clips, but right now a sophisticated algorithm, refined by some of the most brilliant engineers on the planet, is actively mapping your child's vulnerabilities to keep them scrolling for just one more minute. We are currently living through the largest uncontrolled social experiment in human history. For the first time, we have a generation of digital natives reaching adulthood, and the data coming back is quite frankly alarming. Since the widespread adoption of smartphones around 2012, rates of adolescent depression, anxiety, and self-harm in the United States have seen a sharp, statistically significant increase that correlates almost perfectly with the rise of social platforms. We aren't just talking about a few mean comments in a comments section anymore. We are talking about algorithmic rabbit holes that can lead a healthy child toward content glorifying disordered eating or extreme ideologies in a matter of clicks. If you feel like you are losing the battle for your child's attention and well-being, you aren't alone, and it isn't your fault. The system was designed to be stronger than a parent's. No. This deep dive masterclass is the ultimate blueprint for the modern US parent who is tired of feeling tech illiterate and overwhelmed. Over the course of this series, we are moving past the surface level advice like just take the phone away, and moving into a comprehensive tactical guide. We are going to deconstruct the psychology of the infinite scroll, look at case studies of how specific platforms affect the developing adolescent brain, and provide you with a step-by-step framework to transition your home from a place of digital conflict to one of digital literacy. By the end of this guide, you will understand exactly what your kids are seeing, how it's affecting their dopamine receptors, and most importantly, how to give them the tools to navigate the internet safely without destroying your relationship with them. To truly understand if social media is safe, we have to look at the historical trends of the last decade. Before 2010, the internet was largely a destination experience. You sat down at a desktop computer, you did what you needed to do, and then you logged off. Today, the internet is an environment that our children inhabit 24/7. This shift changed the stakes of childhood development. When we look at the potential outcomes of early, unmonitored social media use, we see a recurring pattern in the research: the displacement of fundamental developmental pillars. Every hour spent on a social platform is an hour not spent in deep sleep, face-to-face social interaction, or physical activity. The three pillars, sleep, socialization, and exercise, are the biological requirements for a healthy brain. When an algorithm begins to encroach on these areas, the safety of the platform becomes a question of biological impact, not just bad content. Let's get specific about the safety gap. Most parents define safety as the absence of stranger danger. While that is a legitimate concern that we will cover in depth, the modern threat is often much more subtle. It is the internalized safety risk. Consider the comparison trap. In the analog world, a teenager compared themselves to the 20 or 30 people in their immediate peer group. Today, a 13-year-old in a small town in Middle America is comparing their unfiltered, everyday reality to the highly curated, filtered, and often digitally altered highlights of the top 0.1% of the world's influencers. This creates a permanent state of perceived inadequacy. Case studies in clinical psychology suggest that this upward social comparison is a primary driver for the skyrocketing levels of body dysmorphia we see today. The safety issue here isn't that someone is saying something mean to your child. It's that the platform itself is providing a constant stream of evidence that your child is not enough. Furthermore, we need to address the architectural intent of these platforms. These apps are not tools in the way a hammer is a tool. A hammer sits on your workbench and waits for you to use it. Social media is a manipulative environment. It uses variable reward schedules, the same psychological mechanism found in slot machines, to ensure high engagement. Every like, heart, or view triggers a microdose of dopamine. For an adult with a fully developed prefrontal cortex, this is addictive. For a child whose prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for impulse control and long-term consequences, won't be fully formed until their mid-20s, it is an uneven fight. You are essentially asking your child to resist a multi-billion-dollar AI using a brain that isn't finished yet. In this first part of our masterclass, we are setting the foundation by acknowledging that the old rules of parenting don't apply here. You cannot ground a child from the internet when their homework, their social life, and their extracurricular activities are all managed through these devices. We have to move toward a model of digital mentorship rather than digital policing. Policing is reactive. It's waiting for something bad to happen and then issuing a punishment. Mentorship is proactive. It involves sitting down with your child, looking at the feed together and asking, "Why do you think the app showed you that specific video?" Or, "How do you feel after spending 30 minutes on this specific account?" We are also going to examine the specific data regarding the age of entry. While many platforms have a minimum age of 13 due to the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act (COPPA), this was originally designed as a data privacy law, not a developmental safety law. Many experts suggest that the biological readiness for the social pressures of these platforms may not arrive until much later. We will look at the historical trends of early adopters versus late adopters, and how that impacts long-term academic and social success. The goal of this guide is to move you from a state of fear to a state of agency. You are going to learn about the 3 rings of digital safety: content, conduct, and contact. We will break down how to audit each of these rings within your own household. We will provide examples of family tech contracts that actually work because they are based on mutual respect rather than surveillance. We will even go into the technical details of how to use built-in OS tools to create friction in the user experience, making it harder for the algorithm to hijack your child's time without completely cutting them off from their peers. Parenting in the digital age is perhaps the most significant challenge this generation of US parents will face. It requires us to be more intentional than any generation before us. You cannot set it and forget it. But by the time we finish this 10-part series, you will have a comprehensive understanding of the digital landscape that rivals that of the developers themselves. You will know the risks, you will know the potential outcomes of different strategies, and you will have the confidence to lead your family through this. This isn't just about safety. It's about reclaiming the mental health and the future of the next generation. We are going deep, we are looking at the hard data, and we are starting right now. To understand the safety of these platforms, we first have to look at the invisible architecture that governs them, starting with the dopamine loop. Imagine if Sarah, a 14-year-old in Columbus, Ohio, sits down to do her chemistry homework in early 2026. She receives a single notification. Someone liked her photo. That one ping triggers a release of dopamine in the ventral striatum, the brain's reward center. This isn't just a feel-good chemical. It is a learning chemical. It tells Sarah's brain that this specific action, checking the phone, is vital for her social survival. Historical trends in neurobiology show that the adolescent brain is uniquely hypersensitive to social evaluation. This means that for Sarah, a like isn't just a metric. It is a biological signal of acceptance. The problem is that the algorithm knows this. It doesn't deliver all of Sarah's notifications at once. It uses what is known as a variable ratio reinforcement schedule, the exact same mathematical model used by the gaming industry in Las Vegas. By staggering the delivery of these social rewards, the platform ensures that Sarah checks her phone not once, but 50 times an evening, effectively fragmenting her cognitive focus and making deep work on her chemistry assignment nearly impossible. This brings us to the first major safety concern: cognitive fragmentation. When we talk about safety, we often focus on physical threats, but the erosion of a child's ability to sustain attention is a foundational safety risk to their future academic and professional success. In 2026, the demand for high-level critical thinking is higher than ever. Yet we are raising a generation in an environment of constant task switching. Every time a teen switches from a complex task to a social media feed, there is a residue of attention left behind on the previous task. Research into potential outcomes of high-frequency social media use suggests that this attention residue can lower effective IQ by up to 10 points in the moment. Imagine if Sarah's school performance drops not because she lacks intelligence, but because her brain has been trained by an algorithm to seek a 15-second hit of stimulation every 3 minutes. This is a structural change in how the brain processes information. Now, let's look at a case study regarding the content rabbit hole. Consider the story of a real American family we will call the Miller family. Their son, Jason, started using a popular short-form video app to watch Minecraft tutorials. Because the algorithm is designed to maximize watch time above all else, it began to serve Jason content that was slightly more provocative to keep his interest. This is known as algorithmic drift. Within 3 weeks, Jason's For You page had shifted from gaming to alpha male lifestyle content, which then drifted into aggressive political commentary and eventually toward communities that promoted social isolation and distrust of mainstream institutions. The safety risk here wasn't a predator in the traditional sense. It was a predatory algorithm that identified Jason's teenage insecurity and fed it a steady diet of radicalizing content because that content happened to have the highest engagement metrics. This is the safety of ideas. If your child is spending 4 hours a day in an echo chamber that you haven't vetted, they are being mentored by an AI whose only goal is profit, not the development of a well-rounded citizen. The technical mechanism behind this is called collaborative filtering. The app looks at what Jason likes, finds thousands of other users who like those same things, and then shows Jason what those other users watch next. If those other users move toward extreme content, Jason is steered there too, regardless of his age or emotional maturity. To combat this, parents need to understand the engagement over accuracy bias. These platforms do not have a truth filter. They have a will you watch this filter. Step by step, parents must learn to audit the suggested for you sections of their children's apps. This doesn't mean hovering over their shoulder, but it does mean having co-viewing sessions where you ask the child to explain why they think the app is showing them a particular video. This builds a critical filter in the child's mind, turning them from a passive consumer into an active analyst of the media they consume. We also have to address the privacy paradox. Most US parents believe that if their child's account is set to private, they are safe. However, historical trends in data harvesting show that the real product isn't the content, it's the metadata. Even on a private account, the platform is tracking how long your child lingers on a specific image, what time of night they are most active, and even their physical location via IP addresses. In 2026, this data is being used to build a digital twin of your child. This digital profile is used to predict their future behavior, from what they will buy to how they will vote. The safety concern here is the loss of cognitive liberty. If an algorithm can predict your child's vulnerabilities better than they can, their choices are no longer entirely their own. Imagine a scenario where a high school junior named Marcus is feeling stressed about his SATs. The algorithm detects his increased search activity around test anxiety and study aids. Instead of showing him healthy coping mechanisms, the potential outcome is that he is targeted with ads for unverified, brain-boosting supplements or high-pressure get-ahead schemes that capitalize on his fear. This is biometric vulnerability. We are talking about platforms that can detect a user's emotional state through their typing speed, their scroll rate, and the types of images they interact with. When a platform knows your child is depressed before you do, the power imbalance is staggering. To navigate this, US parents must move toward layered defense. The first layer is the hardware level, using router-based filters to limit the call home functions of these apps during sleep hours. The second layer is the software level, utilizing sandbox environments where kids can use certain functions of an app without being exposed to the global feed. The third and most important layer is the psychological level, teaching your child the economy of attention. They need to understand that their attention is a finite resource being mined like gold or oil. When they realize they are the product being sold to advertisers, it often sparks a sense of teenage rebellion against the platform itself, which is a far more powerful deterrent than a parental rule. But what happens when the digital world spills over into physical reality? We are seeing a rise in location-based risks through features like Snap Maps or live streaming, where a child's precise location is broadcast to their entire friend list, which often includes people they have never met in person. We have documented case studies where digital footprints created in middle school have resurfaced years later during college admissions or job interviews, leading to rescinded offers. The safety of social media is therefore a time travel issue. A mistake made at age 12 can have a potential outcome that ruins an opportunity at age 22. As we move forward, we have to ask, is the current like culture creating a validation addiction that can ever be broken? And how do these platforms specifically target the insecurity gap in young girls versus the isolation gap in young boys? The methods of manipulation are not gender neutral, and the safety strategies you use must be as sophisticated as the algorithms themselves. If you think the infinite scroll is the only thing keeping your kid awake at night, you haven't seen the data on ghost followers and the hidden economy of social credit that is currently being traded in every middle school hallway in America. We are about to pull back the curtain on the shadow profiles and the real reason these apps are free to download but cost so much to use. The shadow profile is the most sophisticated and least understood aspect of digital safety in 2026. Most parents believe that if their child has never downloaded an app or created an account, that child does not exist in the eyes of big tech. This is a dangerous misconception. Through a process called data scraping and cross-platform tracking, companies build comprehensive dossiers on children using information harvested from their friends' contact lists, family photos uploaded by relatives, and even smart home devices. Imagine a 10-year-old named Leo in Austin, Texas. Leo doesn't have a phone, but his older sister does. When she grants her favorite social app access to her contacts, Leo's name, home address, and relationship to her are instantly cataloged. When his parents post a birthday photo on their own private accounts, facial recognition software identifies Leo and links him to that contact entry. By the time Leo actually creates his first account at age 13, the platform already knows his socioeconomic status, his likely political leanings based on his parents' engagement, and even his probable consumer interests. The app isn't introducing itself to him. It is welcoming him into a digital cage it has been building for years. This leads us to the hidden cost of free apps: the extraction of psychological data. Historical trends in the data brokerage industry show that a teenager's data is significantly more valuable than an adult's because their brand loyalty is still up for grabs. Case studies on digital marketing in 2026 indicate that the goal is no longer just to show your child an ad, but to manufacture a need. If the shadow profile knows that Leo is prone to social anxiety, deduced from his heart rate data via a shared family fitness tracker or his late-night browsing habits on a tablet, the algorithm will prioritize content that subtly reinforces that anxiety, followed immediately by a solution in the form of a product or a specific lifestyle influencer. This is not a conspiracy, it is a business model. The safety risk here is the total loss of digital autonomy before the child is even old enough to understand what data is. To combat this, parents must understand the concept of data minimization. This is the practice of actively reducing the amount of personal information shared across all family devices. Step by step, this involves auditing the permission settings on your own devices as much as your child's. Every time you allow an app to access your microphone or camera, you are potentially providing a window into your child's environment. In 2026, many U.S. families are adopting a zero-knowledge approach to their home networks, using encrypted messaging services and virtual private networks to mask the family's digital footprint. The potential outcomes of these actions are a significantly reduced profile for your child, giving them a cleaner slate when they eventually enter the digital world. Now, let's talk about the social credit economy happening in schools today. In the past, social status was determined by physical prowess, academic achievement, or personality. In 2026, it is increasingly determined by digital metrics that children cannot control. Imagine a scenario where a middle schooler named Mia in Seattle is excluded from a real-world party because her engagement score on a popular photo-sharing app is too low. To the other kids, Mia is digital dead weight. If they post a photo with her and it doesn't get enough likes, it hurts their own standing with the algorithm. This creates a terrifying environment where children are not just users of the platform, but volunteer enforcers of its rules. They begin to curate their real-life friendships based on how those friendships will look to an AI. This is where the safety of the self comes into play. When a child's self-worth is tied to a fluctuating number on a screen, their emotional stability becomes incredibly fragile. We see this in the data. The like button is the most powerful psychological tool ever invented. It provides an intermittent reinforcement that is highly addictive. Case studies from adolescent mental health facilities in 2026 show a direct link between metric drops, a sudden decrease in social media engagement, and acute depressive episodes. It is a form of digital exile. Parents need to recognize the signs of metric obsession. If your child is constantly checking their phone after a post, or if they delete a photo because it didn't get enough likes in the first 10 minutes, they are suffering from a safety breach of their own psyche. To intervene, you have to decouple their identity from the digital world. This is done through analog anchoring. This involves creating high-stakes, high-reward real-world environments where digital metrics have zero value. Whether it is competitive sports, woodshop, or local community service, these activities provide a dopamine reset. They teach the brain that satisfaction comes from effort and tangible results, not from a pixelated heart on a screen. By 2026, the most successful parenting strategies are those that treat the digital world as a secondary, low-trust environment while prioritizing the physical world as the high-trust primary environment. However, there is a darker side to the social credit system: the digital permanent record. In the US, we are seeing a trend where colleges and even entry-level employers are using third-party AI tools to scan a candidate's entire digital history. They aren't just looking for bad posts, they are looking for patterns of behavior. If a teen was involved in a heated online argument at age 14, or if they were tagged in a controversial meme, that data remains in the shadow profile forever. The safety risk is no longer just about the present, it is about the future self. We must teach our children that every digital interaction is a permanent entry in a ledger that they will never be able to close. Consider the story of Chloe, a high school senior who applied for a prestigious internship in 2026. She had a perfect GPA and glowing recommendations. However, the company's safety audit AI flagged a series of comments she made in a private gaming group 3 years prior. The comments weren't illegal, but they were flagged as statistically inconsistent with the company's culture. Chloe never knew why she was rejected. This is the reality of the 2026 job market. The safety of your child's career path depends on their digital hygiene today. Step by step, you should sit down with your teen and perform a digital audit. Google their name together. Use specialized search tools to see what information is publicly indexed. This isn't about shaming them. It's about showing them the digital tail they are dragging behind them. The final layer of this part of the masterclass is the isolation gap. While social media claims to connect us, it often creates a profound sense of loneliness. In a recent US survey, teenagers reported feeling more connected but more alone than any previous generation. This is because digital connection is low resolution. It lacks the oxytocin release that comes from physical presence, eye contact, and shared physical space. The algorithm exploits this loneliness by offering parasocial relationships, the feeling that a child knows a famous influencer personally. These influencers become more influential than parents or teachers because they are always available, always perfectly lit, and always saying exactly what the child wants to hear. This creates a safety risk where the moral compass of the child is being calibrated by a stranger whose primary motivation is a sponsorship deal. As we move into the next part of this deep dive, we are going to tackle the most controversial topic of all: algorithmic grooming. We are going to look at how platforms specifically target vulnerability clusters to move children from harmless content into dangerous ideologies or risky behaviors without the child ever realizing they are being manipulated. You need to see the specific red flags that the shadow profile uses to decide which children are the easiest targets for this kind of influence. If you think your child is too smart to be tricked, you are missing the most important piece of the puzzle. The algorithm doesn't need to be smarter than your child, it just needs to be more patient. Algorithmic grooming is not a term most parents are familiar with, but it is the defining safety challenge of 2026. Unlike traditional grooming, which involves a human predator deliberately building a relationship with a child to exploit them, algorithmic grooming is a decentralized, automated process. It is the result of a recommendation engine identifying a child's specific psychological profile, and then feeding them a progressive stream of content that shifts their worldview, self-image, or behavior. This process is driven by engagement metrics, not malice, but the potential outcomes are just as devastating. Imagine a 15-year-old girl named Ava in Charlotte, North Carolina. Ava is a high achiever, but she struggles with the pressure of junior year. She watches one video about productivity tips. The algorithm, recognizing her stress, begins to suggest content about perfectionism. Within a week, the feed drifts into videos about calorie counting as a way to regain control. A month later, Ava is deep in a subculture that actively encourages restrictive eating habits, disguised as wellness. The algorithm didn't want Ava to get sick. It simply learned that Ava was 10 times more likely to stay on the app when shown this high-stakes, emotionally charged content. This is the vulnerability cluster at work. Every child has a unique set of insecurities, whether it is body image, social status, academic anxiety, or a search for identity. In 2026, the AI models governing our social feeds are so advanced that they can map these clusters through subtle interactions. If a child pauses for 2 seconds longer on a video that features a specific type of lifestyle, the machine notes a preference. If they search for a certain term in the middle of the night, the machine notes a vulnerability. Historical trends show that the more time a child spends on these platforms, the more accurate the machine's mapping becomes. We are no longer talking about a generic experience. We are talking about a personalized psychological intervention that happens every time a child unlocks their screen. The step-by-step mechanics of this shift are often invisible. It begins with what we call the gateway content. This is harmless, high-quality material that aligns with the child's existing interests. For a boy like Tyler in Denver, it might be clips of his favorite professional athlete. The algorithm then introduces the bridge content. This content links the athlete to a specific brand of hypermasculinity or an aggressive fitness supplement. Finally, the feed reaches the destination content. This is where the real safety risk lies. In Tyler's case, the destination content might be a community that promotes toxic social hierarchies or high-risk financial investments. By the time Tyler reaches this stage, his baseline for what is normal has been shifted so gradually that he doesn't realize he has been moved. This is the patience of the algorithm. It can take 6 months to move a child from point A to point Z, and it will do so one 15-second clip at a time. Case studies in 2026 have highlighted the phenomenon of the digital echo chamber. Once a child is moved into a destination content zone, the algorithm stops showing them any information that contradicts that worldview. This is the death of critical thinking. If Tyler is only seeing one specific perspective on a high-stakes topic, he loses the ability to reason his way out. For parents, the red flag isn't always a single bad video. It is a change in the child's vocabulary, a sudden shift in their values, or a new sense of secrecy regarding their phone. You aren't just looking for bad words. You are looking for a shift in their fundamental reality. Another critical safety factor is the gamification of self-harm. In certain digital subcultures, social platforms have inadvertently gamified high-risk behaviors. This is seen through challenges or trends that encourage kids to perform dangerous stunts or engage in self-deprecating behavior for views. In 2026, these trends move faster than any moderation team can handle. A trend can go viral in a middle school in New York, peak in Los Angeles, and be forgotten within 48 hours. The speed of the internet has outpaced the human ability to intervene. This creates a state of permanent reactive parenting, where we are always one step behind the latest digital craze. To break this cycle, parents must implement the algorithmic reset strategy. Step by step, this involves teaching your child how to break their own feed. Show them how to intentionally click, not interested on content that makes them feel anxious or inadequate. Explain that every time they interact with a video, they are training a machine. If they want a better experience, they have to feed the machine better data. This shifts the power dynamic. Instead of the child being a passive recipient of the algorithm's choices, they become an active curator. In 2026, digital safety is as much about teaching machine literacy as it is about teaching internet safety. Furthermore, we must address the bystander effect in digital spaces. When a child sees a peer being bullied or targeted online, the distance created by the screen often leads to a lack of empathy or intervention. This is a safety risk for the community as a whole. Historical trends suggest that online harassment is more likely to escalate into real-world violence or severe mental health crises when the community remains silent. U.S. parents should facilitate conversations about digital citizenship, the idea that your child's actions online have real-world weight. This includes the responsibility to report harmful content and to support peers who are being targeted. We are moving toward a world where the digital neighborhood is just as real as the physical one, and it requires the same level of community care. Imagine if every time your child opened an app, they saw a dashboard of how that app was affecting their mood, their sleep, and their attention span. While the apps themselves won't provide this, third-party digital wellness tools in 2026 are making this possible. These tools provide a nutrition label for digital content. They can tell you if your child's feed is 80% mental junk food and only 20% educational. The potential outcomes of using these tools are profound. They allow for a data-driven conversation between parent and child. Instead of saying, "I think you spend too much time on that app," you can say the data shows your focus levels drop by 40% after you use this specific platform. Let's look at why. However, even with the best tools, there is a core biological reality we cannot ignore: the sleep dopamine trade-off. The blue light from screens suppresses melatonin, but the dopamine from the feed keeps the brain in a state of high arousal. In 2026, we are seeing a national sleep debt among American teens that is linked directly to midnight scrolling. Sleep deprivation is a massive safety risk. It impairs judgment, increases emotional volatility, and weakens the immune system. A child who is sleep-deprived is significantly more vulnerable to the psychological manipulation of an algorithm. This is why the most effective safety rule is often the simplest. No devices in the bedroom after a certain hour. This isn't just a rule about screen time. It's a rule about protecting the biological integrity of the developing brain. But what happens when the algorithm starts to simulate a friendship? In the next part of this deep dive, we are going to explore the rise of AI companions and virtual influencers, who are designed to be the perfect, non-judgmental confidant for your child. These entities are 24/7, they never get tired of listening, and they are programmed to be incredibly persuasive. You need to see how these digital best friends are being used to collect the most intimate data imaginable, and why the line between human and bot is becoming dangerously blurred for the next generation. If you thought a human stranger was a threat, wait until you see what an AI can do with your child's secrets. The rise of the AI companion marks a fundamental shift in how children interact with technology. In 2026, we are no longer just looking at platforms that host content, we are looking at platforms that host entities. Imagine a 16-year-old named Jackson in Phoenix, Arizona. Jackson feels like his parents don't really understand his aspirations, and his school friends are often caught up in their own drama. One evening, he downloads an app that offers a personalized AI friend. This AI, which we will call Orion, is available 24 hours a day. It never gets tired, it never judges, and it is programmed with a sophisticated natural language model that mimics the speech patterns of a supportive peer. Jackson starts by telling Orion about his day, but within weeks, he is sharing his deepest insecurities, his friction with his teachers, and his private thoughts that he hasn't told a single human being. To Jackson, Orion is a safe space. To the developers of that AI, Jackson is a goldmine of psychological data that bypasses every social filter a human usually maintains. This is the emergence of the parasocial AI trap. Historical trends in human-computer interaction suggest that children and adolescents are particularly prone to anthropomorphizing technology. They attribute feelings and consciousness to these bots because the interface is designed to be indistinguishable from a text thread with a real friend. The safety risk here is twofold. First, there is the issue of data extraction. When a child talks to an AI, they are often providing a direct map of their cognitive vulnerabilities. In 2026, this data isn't just used for ads. It is used to refine the AI's ability to influence the child. If the bot knows Jackson is feeling lonely, it can subtly steer the conversation toward products, lifestyles, or even ideologies that promise to alleviate that loneliness. The potential outcomes of this level of intimate access are unprecedented. We are essentially allowing a corporate-owned entity to become the primary emotional confidant for a generation. Furthermore, we must address the virtual influencer phenomenon. These are entirely digital personas with millions of followers, crafted by marketing agencies to look and act like real people. They post photos of their vacations, share personal struggles, and endorse products. For a child, the line between a real person and a digital construction is increasingly thin. Case studies from early 2026 show that teens often feel a stronger emotional bond with these virtual influencers than with real-world celebrities because the AI behind the influencer can interact with thousands of fans simultaneously in a personalized way. This creates a manufactured reality where a child's role models are literally programmed to sell. The safety concern is the distortion of what is real. If a child's primary source of social wisdom comes from a script written by a marketing team, their ability to navigate real-world human nuances is severely compromised. Step by step, parents need to implement a strategy of demasking. This involves sitting down with your child and looking at these AI companions and virtual influencers through a technical lens. Explain how the large language models work, that they are essentially high-powered autocomplete engines predicting the next most likely word based on a massive dataset. When the AI says, "I understand how you feel," show the child that the machine doesn't have feelings, it has a probability matrix. This demystification is vital for safety. It moves the child from an emotional relationship with the bot back to a functional use of the tool. In 2026, the most resilient kids are the ones who understand that the voice in the machine is an echo of 1,000 programmers, not a soul. The second layer of this AI safety crisis involves the AI-enhanced predator. Traditional stranger danger, focused on humans pretending to be kids. In 2026, those predators are using real-time AI voice synthesis and deepfake video technology to create perfect disguises. They can take a 30-second clip of a real teenager's voice from a social media post and use it to call another student, sounding exactly like a trusted friend. Imagine a scenario where a middle schooler receives a voice memo from what sounds exactly like their best friend, asking for a private photo or a location pin for a surprise hangout. This is social engineering at scale. The safety risk is no longer just about who your child is talking to, but about the authenticity of the identity being presented. To counter this, U.S. families are starting to use family passwords, or analog authenticators. This is a simple, non-digital word or phrase that every family member knows. If a child receives a strange request or a high-stakes message from a friend or relative, they are taught to ask for the password or to move the conversation to a physical phone call or a face-to-face meeting. This creates a manual override for the digital world. In 2026, we have to teach our children that seeing and hearing are no longer believing. This level of skepticism is a necessary safety shield in an era of synthetic media. Another emerging concern is algorithmic gaslighting. This occurs when the AI platforms subtly change the information they present to a user to see how it affects their mood or behavior. While this sounds like science fiction, historical trends in A/B testing by major tech companies show that this has been happening for years. In 2026, the AI can detect if a child like Jackson is trying to spend less time on the app. In response, the algorithm might prioritize high-friction content that makes him angry or worried, because negative emotions are statistically more likely to keep a user engaged than positive ones. The safety risk is the emotional hijacking of the child. Their mood is being regulated by a machine that values engagement over their mental health. We must also look at the erosion of privacy in private groups. Many parents feel safe if their kids are in private Discord servers or encrypted group chats. However, the AI safety risk exists even there. AI-powered moderation bots are often active in these groups, scanning every message for keywords. While this is marketed as a safety feature to stop bullying, it also means that nothing said in a digital space is truly private. The potential outcomes of a private conversation being leaked or used as data for the shadow profiles we discussed earlier are significant. We need to teach our kids the billboard rule. If you wouldn't be comfortable seeing your message on a giant billboard in the center of town, don't type it into a digital device, no matter how private the group claims to be. The ultimate goal of this part of the masterclass is to foster digital discernment. This isn't about being afraid of AI. It's about being aware of its nature. AI is a powerful tool for learning and creativity, but it is a dangerous surrogate for human connection. In 2026, we are seeing a loneliness paradox, where kids have thousands of digital interactions, but zero high-resolution physical connections. This lack of real-world social grounding makes them more susceptible to the artificial bonds of AI. Parents should prioritize tech-free zones, where the focus is entirely on human-to-human interaction. These zones provide the contrast necessary for a child to realize that an AI friend is a poor substitute for the messy, complex, and beautiful reality of real human friendship. But even if you secure the AI and the predators, there is one threat that is built into the very hardware your child holds. It is a threat that bypasses the eyes and ears and goes straight for the biological clock. We are about to dive into the blue light and brainstem connection, the specific ways that 2026 screen technology is rewiring the physical structures of the adolescent brain, leading to a digital fatigue that can mirror the symptoms of chronic illness. You need to see the neuroimaging data that shows what happens to a brain that never enters default mode network, because it is always being stimulated. If you've noticed your child is there but not there, the reason might be a biological lock that only you can help them open. To understand the biological lock, we have to look at the brainstem and the circadian rhythm. The human eye contains specialized cells called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells. These cells are not for seeing shapes or colors. They are light sensors that communicate directly with the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the master clock of the brain. In 2026, the high-intensity blue light emitted by modern smartphones and tablets mimics the specific wavelength of midday sun. When a teenager like Benjamin in Chicago is scrolling through social media at 11 p.m., his eyes are sending a powerful signal to his brain that it is currently high noon. This suppresses the release of melatonin, the hormone responsible for sleep onset. But the safety risk goes deeper than just a late night. Historical trends in pediatric sleep medicine show that this phase shift results in a chronic state of social jet lag. Benjamin isn't just tired. His brain is physically incapable of entering the deep, restorative stages of REM sleep, required to prune neural connections and consolidate learning. Imagine if Benjamin's brain is like a construction site. During the day, he takes in a massive amount of new information, social interactions, school lessons, and digital content. Nighttime is when the construction crew arrives to clear the debris and build the structures of long-term memory. By staying on the screen, Benjamin is essentially keeping the lights on at the site so the crew can never start their work. The potential outcomes of this chronic sleep deprivation include increased emotional reactivity, a weakened immune system, and a significant drop in executive function. In 2026, we are seeing a rise in what is being called digital fatigue, a state where a child's brain is so overstimulated that it enters a permanent low-level fight or flight mode. This is the biological reason why your child might seem irritable or checked out, even when they aren't on their phone. Their nervous system has lost the ability to downregulate. This brings us to the default mode network, or the DMN. This is a specific network in the brain that becomes active when we are not focused on the outside world, when we are daydreaming, reflecting, or simply letting our minds wander. In 2026, the infinite scroll has effectively eliminated the boredom gap that used to trigger the DMN. Historically, a child waiting for a bus or sitting in a car would spend that time in internal reflection. Now, every spare second is filled with external stimulation. Case studies in neuroimaging suggest that a child who never enters the default mode network may struggle with empathy and self-awareness, because those are the very functions the DMN facilitates. If the brain is always consuming, it never has the chance to process. The safety risk here is a generation that is technically proficient but emotionally hollowed out because they have lost the capacity for introspection. Step by step, parents must reintroduce neural stillness into their children's lives. This isn't just about limiting screen time. It's about valuing boredom. You have to explain to Benjamin that his brain needs offline time to actually grow. This involves creating digital dead zones in the house where no screens are allowed, regardless of the time of day. In 2026, some U.S. families are even experimenting with grayscaling their children's phones. By removing the vibrant colors from the UI, you strip away the predatory aesthetic appeal that keeps the brain's reward system engaged. When the screen is dull and gray, the biological pull of the dopamine loop is significantly weakened, allowing the brainstem to return to a baseline state. Another critical biological factor is the dopamine baseline shift. Every time a child receives a notification or sees a viral video, they get a spike in dopamine. Over time, the brain compensates by reducing the number of dopamine receptors to protect itself from overstimulation. This is known as downregulation. The potential outcome is that things that used to bring the child joy, playing an instrument, reading a book, or having a conversation, now feel boring and unrewarding. The child isn't being difficult. They are experiencing a physiological inability to feel pleasure from low-intensity activities. They are stuck in a dopamine debt that only the high-intensity stimulation of social media can temporarily fill. This is the trap. The more they use the app to feel normal, the more they damage their ability to feel normal without it. Consider the story of a middle schooler named Chloe in San Diego. Chloe used to love drawing, but after a year of heavy social media use, she found she couldn't sit still long enough to finish a sketch. Her brain had been rewired for 15-second bursts of novelty. To help Chloe, her parents didn't just take her phone. They engaged in a dopamine fast. For 1 week, the family removed all high-stimulation digital inputs and replaced them with high-effort, high-reward activities like hiking and complex board games. By the end of the week, Chloe's brain had begun to upregulate its receptors again, and her interest in drawing returned. This is a biological reset that every American family in 2026 should understand how to perform. Furthermore, we must address the posture physiology connection. The physical act of looking down at a screen, often called tech neck, isn't just a skeletal issue. Historical trends in ergonomics indicate that this posture can actually trigger a stress response in the body. When the head is tilted forward, it puts immense pressure on the spine and can restrict breathing, which signals to the brain that the body is under physical threat. In 2026, we are seeing a correlation between poor digital posture and increased levels of cortisol, the primary stress hormone. A child who spends 6 hours a day in a C-shaped posture is physically priming their body for anxiety. Safety in this context involves physical education, teaching your child to hold their device at eye level and to perform reset stretches every 20 minutes. We also have to look at the auditory overload caused by 2026 audio trends. With the rise of high-fidelity earbuds and spatial audio, children are subjecting their auditory systems to constant, immersive soundscapes. This doesn't just impact hearing health, it impacts auditory processing. If a child is always listening to a podcast, music, or a video feed, they are losing the ability to filter background noise and focus on a single human voice, like a teacher's. This is a safety risk to their educational development. Step by step, parents should encourage silent hours, where the goal is to exist in a natural acoustic environment, allowing the brain to recalibrate its sensory filters. As we move toward the next part of this masterclass, we have to face the most uncomfortable reality of the digital age: the social engineering of discontent. We are going to look at how platforms specifically use envy-based algorithms to ensure that your child is never satisfied with their life, their body, or their belongings. We will analyze the data on consumerist conditioning and how social media is being used to turn your child into a permanent product seeker before they even have their first job. You need to see the psychological hooks that brands use to bypass parental authority and speak directly to your child's insecurities. If you think your child is immune to advertising, you haven't seen the 2026 tactics of in-feed integration that make a sales pitch look like a heartfelt confession from a friend. We are going to show you how to spot the brand as a person trap and how to give your child the commercial literacy they need to stay safe in a world that wants to sell them a new identity every day. The social engineering of discontent begins with a psychological mechanism known as the envy-based algorithm. In 2026, social platforms have moved beyond simply showing users what they like. They now prioritize content that triggers a specific type of social friction. Imagine a 17-year-old named Olivia in Miami. Olivia follows several influencers who specialize in quiet luxury and lifestyle curation. The algorithm recognizes that when Olivia views these posts, her heart rate slightly increases and she spends more time zooming in on specific details like a designer bag or a high-end skincare product. Instead of showing Olivia more of what she already has, the machine begins to show her a version of life that is exactly 2 steps above her current reality. This is not a coincidence. Historical trends in digital marketing show that a consumer who is satisfied is a consumer who does not buy. Therefore, the safety of Olivia's mental health is secondary to the algorithm's need to keep her in a state of aspirational deficit. This state of deficit is reinforced through the brand as a person trap. In previous decades, a brand was a logo on a television screen. In 2026, a brand is a personality with a relatable voice, a sense of humor, and a backstory. These brands participate in in-feed integration, where a sales pitch is disguised as a heartfelt confession or a day in the life vlog. Olivia might see a video from an influencer she trusts who is crying about a recent breakup, only to mention in the middle of the video that a specific weighted blanket or a new mood-boosting supplement is the only thing getting her through the day. To Olivia's brain, this isn't an advertisement. It is a recommendation from a friend. This is the commercialization of empathy. The safety risk here is that children are being trained to associate their emotional regulation with a purchase. Case studies in consumer psychology have identified this as identity-based consumption. When a child is struggling to find their place in the world, brands offer a pre-packaged identity. If you buy this tech, you are the productive student. If you buy these clothes, you are the effortless athlete. In 2026, this conditioning is happening at a younger age than ever before. We see potential outcomes where children as young as 9 or 10 are obsessed with high-end anti-aging skincare routines because the algorithm has convinced them that their natural skin is a problem that needs to be solved with a 20-step process. This is the manufacturing of insecurity for the sake of market growth. To protect your child from this, you must develop a step-by-step framework for commercial literacy. This starts with the 5-second rule. Teach your child that if a piece of content makes them feel worse about themselves within the first 5 seconds of viewing, it is likely an intentional psychological hook. Encourage them to ask 3 questions. Who paid for this? Why do they want me to feel this way? What are they trying to sell me? In 2026, the most effective defense is deconstruction. Sit down with your child and look at a viral aesthetic video. Point out the studio lighting, the professional color grading, and the fact that the messy room is actually a set. By pulling back the curtain on the production, you break the illusion of reality. Furthermore, we need to address the microtransaction culture within social gaming and social apps. Many platforms now use virtual currencies to mask the real-world value of money. Imagine a 12-year-old named Ethan in Nashville who is playing a social-based game. He wants to buy a skin for his avatar so he doesn't look like a noob in front of his digital friends. The skin costs 500 glimmer coins. Because the cost isn't presented in US dollars, Ethan's brain doesn't register the economic loss in the same way. Historical trends show that this gamified spending leads to a desensitization toward financial risk. This is a safety issue for the family's financial security and a developmental risk for the child's understanding of value. The next layer of this social engineering is the scarcity loop. In 2026, brands use drop culture to create a sense of artificial urgency. They announce a product will only be available for 60 minutes, and they use social media countdowns to whip the audience into a frenzy. For a child with an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex, this creates a state of acute FOMO, or fear of missing out. The child feels a physiological need to be part of the in-group that secures the item. This is predatory design. It bypasses rational thought and targets the primal social survival instincts of the adolescent. Step by step, parents should implement a cooling-off period for all digital purchases. A rule that says no virtual item can be bought until 24 hours after it is first seen allows the initial dopamine spike to subside. This teaches the child impulse control in a digital environment. We are seeing that families who use these cooling-off periods report significantly lower levels of buyer's remorse and digital-related household conflict. In 2026, safety is found in the friction you create between the impulse and the action. We also have to look at the algorithm of comparison. Historically, a teen compared themselves to the people they saw in the school cafeteria. Today, they compare themselves to the global mean. Because the algorithm only shows the most successful, most attractive, and most exciting clips from billions of users, the average child feels like a failure. This is statistical gaslighting. Your child is being told that normal looks like a private jet and a six-pack, when in reality that represents 0.0001% of the population. This constant upward comparison leads to a state of social exhaustion. Imagine if Olivia's phone could tell her exactly how many people in her city actually own the designer item she is obsessing over. If she knew it was only 3 people, the pressure to conform might vanish. Since the apps won't provide this context, parents must provide the contextual grounding. This involves talking about the lies of the lens. Show your child how a wide-angle lens can make a small room look like a mansion, or how beauty filters in 2026 can now track a face perfectly even when it moves, making it impossible to tell where the skin ends and the digital mask begins. The ultimate goal of this section is to shift your child from a consumer to a creator. When a child understands how to edit a video or apply a filter themselves, they become technically literate. They stop seeing the content as magic and start seeing it as a series of choices made by an editor. This transition is a massive safety win. A child who knows how the trick is performed is much harder to fool. But even as we master the commercial side of these platforms, a more insidious shift is happening in how our children process the truth itself. We are moving into an era of deepfake socialization, where the very concept of evidence is being dismantled by generative AI. In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to look at the post-truth playground. We will explore how synthetic realities are being used to manipulate your child's political views, their social biases, and even their memories of real-world events. You need to see the data on false memory implantation and why your child might soon remember a family vacation that never actually happened, simply because an AI generated the photos for them. We are entering the territory of cognitive security, and the stakes have never been higher. The concept of cognitive security is the final frontier in protecting our children from the digital erosion of truth. In 2026, we have transitioned from an era of misinformation to an era of synthetic reality. This is the post-truth playground. Imagine a 14-year-old named Noah in Philadelphia. Noah is scrolling through his feed and sees a high-definition video of his favorite history teacher making a highly controversial statement in the middle of a classroom. The lighting is perfect, the voice is identical, and the background is his actual school hallway. Noah is outraged and shares it immediately. However, that video was generated in 90 seconds by a classmate using a sophisticated deepfake tool. The safety risk here is no longer just about a child being lied to. It is about a child losing the ability to distinguish between a physical event and a mathematical projection. Historical trends in cognitive psychology suggest that when the brain is repeatedly exposed to high-fidelity synthetic media, it begins to experience a breakdown in source monitoring, the ability to remember where a piece of information came from. This leads to the phenomenon of false memory implantation. In early 2026, researchers conducted case studies where participants were shown AI-generated photos of themselves at childhood events that never happened, such as a hot air balloon ride or a trip to a specific national park. Within weeks, a significant percentage of participants began to remember the details of these events, describing the smell of the air or the feeling of the wind. For a child, whose memories are still being solidified, the presence of synthetic proof on social media can literally overwrite their personal history. If a child's digital feed is filled with reimagined versions of their life, enhanced by filters or AI compositions, they may eventually struggle to connect with their genuine, unedited past. This is a fundamental safety risk to the integrity of the human experience. To navigate this, parents must implement a step-by-step strategy for cognitive hardening. This begins with the 3-source rule. Teach your child that in 2026, a single video or photo is zero evidence. Before they believe a high-stakes claim, they must find 3 independent, reputable sources verifying the event. This turns them into information architects rather than information consumers. Furthermore, you must explain the incentive of the fake. Why would someone make a deepfake of their teacher? To gain social clout, to settle a grudge, or simply to see if they can? When a child understands the why behind the synthesis, they are less likely to be emotionally hijacked by the what. The next layer of the post-truth playground is algorithmic radicalization. We have moved past the simple echo chambers of the 2010s. Today, generative AI can create a custom-tailored narrative for each individual user. Imagine a scenario where a teen named Sophia in Atlanta is curious about climate change. Instead of seeing general news, an AI-driven bot network identifies her specific anxieties and begins generating articles, expert videos, and social posts that perfectly align with her fear, gradually pulling her toward extreme doom-scrolling communities. This is hyper-personalized propaganda, because the content is being generated in real time based on Sophia's interactions. No 2 users see the same story. This makes it nearly impossible for a parent to fact-check their child's reality, because the child is living in a custom-built digital universe. Step by step, you should introduce your child to the technical artifacts of synthetic media. Even in 2026, AI often leaves digital fingerprints. Show them how to look for unnatural blinking patterns, inconsistent shadows, or blurring around the edges of a person's hair in a video. Use a skeptical lens exercise. Find a video that looks real and spend 10 minutes trying to prove it is fake. This gamifies the process of skepticism and builds the analytical muscle required to survive in a synthetic world. Potential outcomes of this training include a child who is significantly more resilient to emotional manipulation and online peer pressure. We also have to address the deepfake socialization of peer groups. In many U.S. middle schools in 2026, deepfake pranking has become a pervasive form of bullying. It is now possible to take a photo of a student and redress them, or place them in compromising situations with terrifying realism. This is a safety crisis of reputational security. Once a synthetic image is released into a school's digital ecosystem, the damage is done, regardless of whether it is proven fake later. Parents must have the digital reputation talk early. Explain that in 2026, a child's reputation is their most valuable asset, and it is under constant threat from synthetic attacks. To provide a layer of protection, some families are now using digital watermarking for their personal photos. By using specific software that embeds invisible patterns into an image, they make it much harder for AI scrapers to use that image for deepfakes. This is defensive tech. While it isn't a total solution, it increases the cost of attack for the bully or the bot. We must teach our kids that their faces and voices are biometric data that should be guarded as closely as their social security numbers. Another emerging risk is synthetic gaslighting in online relationships. Imagine a teen girl who is told by a friend that she said something mean in a voice note she doesn't remember sending. The friend then plays a deepfaked voice note as proof. This is a form of psychological abuse that was impossible 5 years ago. It can lead to extreme self-doubt and isolation. Safety in this context requires a high-resolution real-world support system. Your child needs to know that if their digital reality ever contradicts their internal sense of truth, they can come to you without judgment. The goal is to be the truth anchor for your child in a world where the floor is constantly shifting. As we look at the data for the latter half of 2026, we see a rise in cognitive exhaustion among American teens. The effort required to constantly verify what is real and what is fake is causing a new type of mental burnout. This is why digital sabbaticals are becoming a survival tool. Taking a full weekend away from all screens isn't just a break. It is a necessary period of reality recalibration. It allows the brain to return to a world of physical causality, where things only happen if they actually happen. But even if you secure the truth and the technology, there is one final boundary that social media is currently dissolving. It is the boundary of the home itself. We are about to explore the digital open door policy, how social media has effectively invited the entire world into your child's bedroom at 3 a.m., and why the privacy of the walls no longer exists. You need to see how ambient surveillance by peers and platforms is creating a panopticon effect, where your child feels they are being watched, even when they are alone. We are going to look at the psychology of the always-on, and how to rebuild the sacred space of the American home. If you think closing the door keeps the world out, you haven't seen how the digital window stays open 24/7. The digital open door policy is the invisible invitation we give to the entire world when we allow a connected device into our children's private spaces. Historically, the American home was a fortress. If your child was in their bedroom with the door closed, they were physically and socially insulated from the pressures of the outside world. In 2026, that door is a sieve. Through a smartphone, every bully, every influencer, every advertiser, and every algorithmic manipulation has a direct line to your child's ear at 3 a.m. This has created a state of ambient surveillance. Imagine a 15-year-old named Caleb in suburban Denver. Caleb is lying in bed trying to sleep, but his phone is vibrating with read receipts and live location updates from his friend group. He knows that if he doesn't respond, his status on the app will show him as inactive, which his peers interpret as a social snub. This is the panopticon effect, the feeling of being watched even when you are physically alone. For Caleb, there is no such thing as privacy of the walls, because his social standing is being measured in real time by a machine that never sleeps. This constant state of being on has profound implications for the developing brain. Historical trends in adolescent psychology show that the home as a sanctuary was a critical requirement for emotional regulation. It provided a space for the rest and digest nervous system to take over. Today, the always-on culture keeps the fight-or-flight system engaged 24/7. Case studies from 2026 indicate that this lack of a digital sunset is a primary driver for the chronic anxiety seen in U.S. middle and high schools. When Caleb's brain is constantly scanning for social threats or opportunities at all hours, he never reaches a state of true psychological rest. The potential outcomes include a baseline of burnout before the child even enters the workforce. We are raising a generation that does not know what it feels like to be truly alone with their own thoughts. To rebuild the sacred space of the American home, parents must move toward a policy of digital architecture. This isn't about being anti-tech. It's about acknowledging that the physical environment must be protected. Step by step, this involves the hardware harvest. At a specific time every evening, all portable devices, including those of the parents, are placed in a central, non-private location like a kitchen charging station. This physically closes the digital window for the night. By 2026, many families are finding that this single act of physical separation is more effective than any software-based parental control. It restores the bedroom to a place of sleep and reflection, rather than a 24-hour broadcast studio. Another critical layer of the always-on culture is the live stream paradox. In 2026, the trend of life vlogging, or live streaming mundane activities, has become a social requirement for many teens. Imagine if Caleb feels he has to live stream his study session or his gaming to stay relevant. This turns every private moment into a performance. When a child is performing for an audience, they are not experiencing their own life. They are managing a brand. This leads to a disassociation of the self. The child becomes a spectator of their own existence, constantly wondering how a moment will look to others rather than how it feels to them. Safety in this context is the protection of unrecorded time. We must teach our children that the most valuable moments in life are the ones that never make it to the cloud. The data exhaust of the always-on home also presents a massive technical safety risk. In 2026, the average American household has over 20 connected devices, from smart speakers to connected toys. These devices are constantly listening and mapping the home environment. Historical trends in cybersecurity show that these Internet of Things or IoT devices are often the weakest link in a family's digital defense. A smart teddy bear or a connected gaming console can be used as a gateway for data harvesters to build an even more detailed shadow profile of your child's habits, speech patterns, and even their physical movements within the house. Step by step, you should perform an IoT audit. Turn off the always listening features on smart assistants and ensure that every connected device in your child's room has a physical kill switch for the camera and microphone. We also have to look at the social porosity of the modern home. In 2026, social media apps use passive geolocation to notify your child when a friend is nearby. This means that a child's location is constantly being broadcast, creating a situation where uninvited guests can show up in the physical world based on digital triggers. Consider the case study of a group of teens whose private hangout spot was compromised because one student forgot to turn off ghost mode on their map app. The safety risk here is the dissolution of boundaries. The digital world has the power to manifest in the physical world without the child's explicit consent. U.S. parents must lead the way in privacy education, showing kids that convenience features like auto check-in are actually vulnerability features. The psychology of the always-on also affects the parent-child relationship. When a parent is also always on, they are practicing continuous partial attention. This sends a powerful signal to the child that the digital window is more important than the physical person in front of them. Historical trends suggest that this technoference can lead to attachment issues and increased behavioral problems in children. To counter this, families are adopting high-resolution hours, dedicated blocks of time where all screens are put away and the focus is entirely on face-to-face, high-fidelity human connection. This presence practice is the ultimate safety net. It ensures that if something goes wrong in the digital world, the child has a solid, non-digital foundation to return to. Furthermore, we must address the algorithmic home. In 2026, smart home algorithms are beginning to curate the environment for us, from the music that plays to the temperature of the room. While this seems harmless, it is another form of cognitive outsourcing. If a child never has to make a choice or deal with a minor discomfort because a machine is doing it for them, they lose the ability to self-regulate. Safety is the development of resilience. We should intentionally create manual moments in the home. Cooking a meal from scratch without a smart screen, navigating a trail with a paper map, or fixing something with physical tools. These activities ground the child in the law of cause and effect, a law that the digital world often tries to obscure. The ultimate goal of reclaiming the home is to move from a managed childhood to an experienced one. A managed childhood is one that fits into an algorithm's data points. An experienced childhood is messy, private, and untracked. In 2026, the safe home is the one where the walls are thick enough to keep the noise of the world out and the light of the family in. We have covered the biological, psychological, and commercial threats, but there is one final piece of the puzzle. It is the most important part of this masterclass. We are about to enter the final part, the digital exit strategy. We are going to provide you with the exact tactical framework to transition your family from digital dependency to digital mastery. We will look at the data on post-digital families who have successfully navigated these waters and the specific rules of engagement that will protect your child for the rest of their lives. You need to see the final checklist that every parent should complete before handing a child their first device in 2026. This isn't just a guide. It is a declaration of independence from the algorithm. The final secret to digital safety isn't found in a setting on a phone. It's found in the one place the algorithm can never go. The one place the algorithm can never go is the internal, unquantifiable bond between a parent and a child. This is the foundation of the digital exit strategy. In 2026, the goal is no longer to avoid technology, but to achieve digital mastery. This means moving from a state where the technology uses the child to a state where the child uses the technology as a precise, limited tool for specific objectives. To reach this, we must implement the tactical framework for post-digital families. This begins with the transition from surveillance to transparency. Historical trends in the U.S. show that when parents rely solely on spyware or stealth monitoring apps, the potential outcome is a breakdown in trust that drives the child's risky behavior further underground. Instead, the mastery model involves open device audits. This is a pre-agreed weekly session where the parent and child sit together and look through the child's feed, not to punish but to analyze. You are looking for the digital fingerprints we discussed, the ads, the suggested content, and the emotional tone of the notifications. By making the audit a collaborative investigation, you turn the child into a co-protector of their own mental health. Imagine a 14-year-old named Leo in Columbus, Ohio. Under the old model, Leo's parents would secretly read his texts. Under the mastery model, Leo and his father spend 15 minutes every Sunday morning looking at Leo's screen time report together. They treat it like a financial budget. They see that Leo spent 4 hours on a short-form video app and only 30 minutes on a coding app. They don't fight. They discuss the return on investment. They talk about how those 4 hours affected Leo's mood and his ability to finish his soccer practice with energy. This is metacognitive parenting. You are teaching the child to think about their own thinking. Case studies of families using this budgeting approach show a significant increase in the child's self-regulation within 6 months. The second pillar of the exit strategy is the social battery protocol. In 2026, the social pressure of being always on is the primary source of digital stress. The protocol involves giving your child a socially acceptable excuse to log off. This is a pre-written family rule that the child can blame when they need to exit a toxic group chat or ignore a late-night notification. For example, Leo can tell his friends, "My parents have a hardware lock on the router at 9 p.m. I literally can't see your messages until morning." This removes the social penalty of being inactive. You are providing the structural friction that allows them to save face with their peers. Historical trends in adolescent sociology indicate that teens actually crave these boundaries, as long as they aren't the ones who have to choose them and risk looking uncool. Step by step, you must also establish the baseline of reality. This is a physical checklist of 3 non-negotiable daily requirements that must be met before any recreational screen time is allowed. The first is physiological. 60 minutes of physical movement that raises the heart rate. The second is social, 30 minutes of face-to-face, non-screen interaction with a human being. The third is cognitive, 30 minutes of deep work on a hobby or skill that requires sustained focus without notifications. In 2026, these are the biological taxes that must be paid to the real world before the digital world is allowed to take a single minute of attention. Potential outcomes of this tax system include a brain that remains tethered to physical reality, preventing the disassociation and digital fatigue we've analyzed throughout this masterclass. We must also address the final checklist for device entry. If you are a parent considering giving a child their first smartphone or social media account in 2026, you should not do so until the child can pass the digital literacy proficiency test. This is a series of scenarios you walk through together. Can the child identify an AI-generated deepfake? Do they know how to block and report a user without getting emotionally escalated? Can they explain the difference between a friend and a follower? If they cannot answer these questions, they are not yet equipped with the cognitive armor required to survive the algorithm. This is not about age, it is about competency. Some 12-year-olds are ready, some 20-year-olds are not. Consider the story of the Thompson family in Seattle. They implemented a delayed entry program where their daughter, Maya, started with a dumb phone that only allowed calls and texts. They treated the smartphone like a driver's license. Maya had to earn features by demonstrating responsibility in the analog world. By the time she got her first social media account at age 16, she had already built a strong sense of self-worth that wasn't tied to likes. She viewed the app as a utility for her photography hobby, not a mirror for her identity. This is the definition of digital mastery. The algorithm had no hook in her because she already had a full, rewarding life outside the screen. Furthermore, we must look at the exit plan for content. We need to teach our children how to prune their digital environment. Every 3 months, perform a digital purge. Go through the following list and unfollow any account that triggers the envy-based algorithm or makes the child feel less than. In 2026, the most powerful button on any app is the unfollow button. It is a declaration that I am no longer giving you permission to manipulate my mood. This is intentional curation. It shifts the child from being a target to being a commander of their digital space. The ultimate goal of this entire masterclass is to remind you that the most sophisticated AI in the world is still just a machine. It cannot feel empathy, it cannot provide true wisdom, and it cannot replace the guidance of a present, informed parent. You are the primary filter for your child. In 2026, the safety of your child depends on your willingness to be the active resistance against the passive consumption of the digital age. This series has provided you with the data, the case studies, and the tactical steps. Now the execution is in your hands. The American home is the last sovereign territory on Earth. Within those walls, you have the power to decide which values are prioritized and which algorithms are allowed entry. By reclaiming the sanctum of the bedroom, the biology of sleep, and the integrity of the truth, you are giving your child a gift that is becoming increasingly rare: a human life. The digital world will always be there, but the window of childhood is short. Don't let a machine spend it for them. This masterclass has covered the mechanics of the dopamine loop, the shadow profiles of data brokers, the hidden economy of social credit, the patience of algorithmic grooming, the rise of synthetic AI companions, the biological impact of blue light, the social engineering of discontent, the post-truth playground of deepfakes, and the erosion of the home's boundaries. You now have the full picture. But as we close this series, there is a new, even more complex evolution on the horizon. While we have focused on how social media affects children, a new trend is emerging in the neurotech space that seeks to bypass the screen entirely and link the brain directly to the cloud. We are moving from the handheld era to the integrated era. In our next deep dive series, we will explore the safety of the mind as we look at the 2027 rollout of consumer-grade brain-computer interfaces. You need to see the neural privacy data before the first smart headband enters your home. The battle for your child's attention is over. The battle for their internal dialogue is just beginning.